And good afternoon. My name is Dudley, and I'm going to briefly speak to you about some of our other Lab.gruppen products. So in the video featuring our new Lucia product, we saw Klaus and present that very nicely. And he had mentioned our E-Series amplifiers, and there's some crossover features. We have Energy Star compliance and the auto power off and on scheme for energy savings in that retrospect as well. So if the amplifier's not doing nothing, it's going to go to sleep and save you some electrical costs and be that much more efficient. E-Series is different in a few aspects as well. One, it's not a new product. It's a product that's been out for about 3 or 4 years. And instead of a fixed output load, it features a thing we call asymmetric loading. So it has an asymmetric power supply. And what does that mean? It means we can do different output impedances and wattages on each side of the amp. So you have a single rack space chassis. You have 2 output channels, 3 power ratings on the amplifier. You have 400 watts, 800 watts, and 1200 watts. And being that it's asymmetrical, we can do 200 watts on one side of the amp and perhaps the remaining 1,000 watts on the other side of the amplifier with the 1200 watt model, or any combination thereof, or we could just use a single channel, all 1200 watts. Taking it a step further, well, let's make one side of the amplifier low voltage and the other side low impedance. A typical install scenario, I'm at the mall, there's a clothing store there. It's about the size of this room, and 4 to 8 ceiling speakers are running 70 volt off of one side of the amplifier, and we can put the remaining power on the other side of the amplifier to a subwoofer. So channel 1's maybe 200 watts at 70 volts, and channel 2 is 1,000 watts at 8 ohms or 4 ohms or 2 ohms, because it's the law that if you're in a mall, you have to have a subwoofer if you have music in your store. He agrees. We've all been there. So that's a little bit about our asymmetrical power supply with the E-Series. Again, single space rack chassis, 2 output channels, and you can only use one channel if you need to. You can use all 1,200 watts on one output channel. And from that end of the spectrum, we go to our new D-Series integration super power amplifiers. More higher power requirements, bigger installs, etc. So this is a new product. It's been shipping 6 months, 8 months or so, and we have a 2 rack space chassis, and it features 4 output channels. We have 3 power ratings on this product. We have 8,000 watts, we have 12,000 watts, and we have 20,000 watts. And if we look at this first bullet point up here, we have flexible allocation of up to 20,000 watts. So, well, what does that mean? We talked about it briefly with E-Series, how we can move some power around and play with it. With these amplifiers, and I'll use the 8,000 watt model as an example. So we have 8,000 watts, 4 output channels. According to my math, that's 2,000 watts per channel, correct? Yes and no. We have a feature called RPM, in other words, rational power management, to where we can tailor that 8,000 watts. I like to use the analogy of I have an 8,000 watt pie, and I'd like to cut it up 4 different ways. So let's say channel 1 might be 2,000 watts or 3,000 watts at 8 ohms or what have you. Channel 2 is 516 watts at 6.8 ohms. Channel 3 is a 1,700 watt string of 70 volt speakers, and channel 4, it is what it is. So we can slice up that pie 4 ways, 8,000 watts. With that 8,000 watt model amplifier, we can use one of the channels up to 5,000 watts. And with the 12,000 watt model, we can use up to 2 of those channels, 5,000 watts. And with the 20,000 watt model, we can use all 4 channels, pedal to the metal, guns a-blazing, 5,000 watts per channel. We do that without sacrificing channel count, and we do that without bridging, and we can do it pretty darn efficiently, kind of what Lab.gruppen is known for. So that's fantastic. We can carve up this pie 4 different ways. How do we get there? Is it a button on the front? What do you do? We have a piece of software called Cafe. And that allows us to carve up this pie, if you will. So Cafe software allows us to do a few things. It can be a design tool. It can be a commissioning tool, and it also allows us to monitor and survey the venue. So if we look at it as a design tool, let's say, well, I'm designing a football stadium or theme park or something or other. I'm at the beginning stages of this entire project. So let's say our job consists of 37 zones, for lack of a better number. And zone 1 is going to be a load impedance zone. Zone 2 is a 70-volt run. We input all this data, all this criteria based on the speaker manufacturer's specifications, whether it's our speakers or somebody else's. We take the data sheet. Well, this thing says 800 watts at 8 ohms. That's what I'm going to put on channel 1. So in theory, because we're able to tailor this power, we're never going to give that speaker no more than 800 watts at 8 ohms, and in theory, it's never going to blow. So we're being that much more efficient. So we input all this data. It's 70 volts, it's 8 ohms, it's 2 ohms, all 37 zones. We've got all kinds of speakers and stuff. That's fantastic. Which amps do I use? So we click a couple mouse clicks, hit enter, and it will give us a suggested bill of materials of what amplifiers to use for this project based on cost. So 37 zones, well, that's going to be 12 of this model of D series, 13 of this model of D series, and X amount of this other model of D series. Gee whiz, that saved me some homework. Well, let me crack open Excel. Let's do a spreadsheet of power calculations now. Wait a minute. The power's dynamic. How am I going to figure that out? Out of the box, it's a 15 or 20 amp device, but I'm not using all the power. I've allocated power. Oh, let me do a couple more mouse clicks. And here is your current draw specifications. Well, gee whiz, that's fantastic. The electrical guy is going to love this. And quite frankly, I thought it was going to be this much power, and I'm only using this much power. Wow, I'm even that much more efficient now. Wonderful. Well, just for the sake of it, how about thermal calculations? Let's click the mouse a couple more times, and here is your thermal calculations for the AC guy. You're shaking your head like I just made your life wonderful. Thank you very much. I'll send you an invoice. So it's able to do that. So that's our design tool. So this job, this venue, this hypothetical place, it's a year from now, and the cement has dried or whatever. We're on the job site. The speakers are hung. The amp racks are built. They're installed. Everything is wired. Well, it's time to make sure all this stuff lights up and works. So we plug our laptop in with Cafe software, and we've downloaded all this data to the amplifiers, and it's making noise. Everything is wonderful. Now we can do some impedance sweeps for each of the zones, like this speaker. The speaker is an 8 ohm device, but the tolerances are 6.8 to 12.2, or whatever that figure may be. Why do we do that? So we can monitor. So it's all green lights now. Well, gee whiz, we've got a red light. It's zone 7. It's that speaker that's up on top of that 100-foot pole. We know one of two things. We know that the driver has blown, or perhaps a rat has eaten through the speaker cable. So it's that much easier to identify what speaker has blown or where we have a failure or something. So in a very brief nutshell, that is our Cafe software. So I alluded to, well, we plug in our laptop into the amplifier. Do we just plug it into each one of these amps, download the things? No. Networkability. These amps are networked. So let's dig into that a little bit. So networked, it's kind of a two-pronged thing here. So out of the box, this amplifier has 2 ways to work with you. The first one has our built-in world-class Lake DSP. That DSP is built in, it's under the hood, it's inside of the amplifier, and runs on the Dante digital audio transport. Your second option out of the box is a partnered product, if you will. It's Tessera by Biamp. It says so on the front of the amp along with Lab.gruppen, and it operates on the AVB digital transport. And so there's a couple options. You've got Dante, you have AVB, you've got Lake DSP, and you've got Tessera by Biamp. Is there any Biamp programmers or certified guys in the room? Okay, there you go. So in working with Tessera Biamp, do you have to download a third-party thing or a firmware? No. No, if you crack open your Tessera software and you have your I/O DSP blocks, there's echo cancellation, this, that, the other, and right there, Lab.gruppen D-Series amplifiers. Grab it, drag, drop to your design desktop. You are up and running. Two differences. The Lake version has the DSP built in the amplifier, and the Tessera Biamp version has the DSP residing in the server, in the network. So there's no DSP inside the amp per se. Cafe interfaces with both of these, though. Cafe software is available in Mac or Windows. So that's out of the box. We've talked about networking. What else can we do? So back to the wall over here, we have real deal case studies. These are real deal installs, where we have interfaced our amplifiers with third-party matrix systems with audio and control functions. So we have a QSC QSys, we have a BSS, and we have a Media Matrix Neon to where our amplifiers are playing friendly with these other third-party matrix systems and operating in a control sense as well with mutes and ons and offs tied into life safety evac, paging, et cetera, et cetera. So these aren't just pretty pictures. These are real deal installs that are already up and running. They sound fantastic, they work, and everybody's life is better because of it. So in a nutshell, that's kind of about it. We've got some product managers around the room to answer questions. The last slide I'm going to give you guys before everybody breaks for lunch today, and everybody's hungry, is just a brief reminder of our Tannoy QFlex product. This is a QFlex 32 digitally steered speaker array. It comes in smaller sizes, bigger sizes. These are fantastic for those acoustically challenged spaces, i.e., an airport, Catholic church, lots of glass, lots of marble, et cetera, et cetera. So here's a perfect scenario, and these are some of our prominent installs. Glasgow train station, to where, let's just call it a nightmare as far as audio goes, but we've got all these reflective surfaces, so we're able to, with software, dial in the energy where it needs to go, keep it off the surfaces that we don't want it on. The end result, you have a happy customer, a better listening environment, intelligible paging systems, and at the end of the day, it just sounds better. So there's another one at Museum of Natural History in Los Angeles. And as you can see, again, nightmare. So with that said, on behalf of Ivan and myself and the entire music group, have a fantastic InfoComm show, and thank you so much for your time.